What's up everybody and welcome back to the channel. In this video for the First Descendant today, we're going to be looking at the ALBION Cavalry gun. This thing used to suck, but it's actually pretty damn good now, and the reason for this is with the patch that we got on the reactor implanting, we also had 3 unique weapons which were basically changed or fixed or altered or whatever you want to call it. ALBION Cavalry gun was one of them, and essentially they reworked the unique effect of this weapon completely. So let's go ahead and start right there and let's look at the unique effect first things first. The base stats of this weapon are not phenomenal. It's one of the reasons why it kind of like struggles to build up into something really good, and I think it's one of the reasons why the developer looked at it. But it doesn't have exceptionally high base crit hit or hit damage, and its weak point damage is also super low as a base. So kind of like you have to spend a lot of mods, a lot of catalysts on this to kind of like get some stats onto this and make it better. But what has completely changed is the unique ability. Basically the old ability was pretty stupid. It was that whenever it crit, it would stun the enemy that you're shooting, and pretty much there was a whole bunch of enemies that could not be stunned, and it just felt very cumbersome. And because it had such a low crit value to begin with, it was difficult to build into crit with it to actually get that effect to proc reliably. So they completely changed it now, and essentially what it does now is it inflicts a debuff on the enemy called Mark. Now this, when it hits the when you shoot an enemy for the first time, it gets the mark on it. Now when you shoot an enemy that has the mark on it, then it increases your critical hit rate by a flat plus 30, which is huge. And then what it does is it also applies a ricochet effect every time you then crit against the enemy that has this mark on it. This ricochet effect shoots out to the 3 nearest enemies and basically stuns them, and then also applies firearm damage times 32% to them. Last but not least, as long as you are shooting enemies with this, you build up something called horseshoe, and this allows you to move faster while basically not aiming and while aiming down sight. So where usually with LMGs, once you start shooting, your character slows down a lot, what horseshoe does is actually speeds you up and moves you around. So in practicality, let me show you basically what we're talking about here. So just over here, let's go ahead and just drop some enemies in here. Let's make sure to just increase them up to max level, kind of always do that. And then let's just get the whole bunch in there, and I'm actually going to turn on invincibility so you can actually just see the effect, you know, happening. So here I shoot. Now you can see the 3 enemies closest to are getting stunned, so you can see there, boom, there we go, there the stun procs on them. Now you can also see what happens is as I'm shooting and I move, it starts building up horseshoe, and now I have a max stack of horseshoe, and I'm basically just, you know, running and gunning, and it's absolutely beautiful. So this is really awesome. The other thing that I can also show you is that the stun distance is actually quite a bit. It's not exactly what you would call small. So let's go over here, let's just eliminate these dudes, let's respawn them. And then let's do this, let's turn it off so I can actually kill someone's in the middle. So maybe I just blow these dudes away quickly. So now you'll see if I shoot all the way on this side, it's actually going to stun all the way across. So you see that? Boom. It's actually stunning all the way across it. So the distance is quite a lot. The priority that it applies the stun on is basically that it goes for whichever enemy is healthiest around the boss. Now this is very important, or I say around the boss, but I mean like around the main target that they're shooting. This is super important because that means that as it's stunning and it's applying damage, then other enemies have higher HP than the one that got stunned. So essentially it doesn't just stun the same 3 dudes the whole time. Basically it can stun multiples, right? So the point is that you will stun the initial 3, and then it'll start stunning other dudes around that. So even if there's a group of 6 or 7 or 8 or something like that, you'll actually start stunning the entire group and basically lock them all down. Now, this is basically the sickest part of this weapon, and I'm going to be showing you some footage just now after we go through the mods that you should be using for this. Actually, fuck it, let's run some footage right now, and you can see here, this is me just basically just using this to absolutely slow down enemies pushing towards me. You can basically see it locks down an entire group of enemies. You're dealing a whole bunch of damage. It's just damage numbers everywhere. The shit just, you know, flies, and basically you can lock down entire groups of enemies with this thing. It stuns bosses, so yellow bar enemies get stunned by this as well. So this shit is just fucking insane. Now, if we look at the mods here, basically, this is the build that I ended up, settling on. Now, again, like I said, we start from a very low value for crit, right? And so there's only so much we can do with such a low value. So I'm trying to boost that as much as possible. So the two most direct ways that you can do that is better insight, gives you a huge chunk of critical hit rate. And then edging shot also gives you a fairly biggish chunk, but you do get that 15% firearm attack penalty though. That's okay, because in the end, this weapon deals, I think, significant enough damage that it's more about getting the effect to proc more often and actually locking down enemies, which is the reason why I ended up going for this. Now, of course, the other three staples in every weapon are also present here. So that's action, reaction, rifling reinforcement, and fire rate up. And then I'll explain chill enhancement just now, why I went for that. But chill enhancement is my enhancement effect, giving me additional firearm attack there as well. Then the point is, since we are critting, we do want those crits to matter as well, right? So better concentration is a good pull for us here, because it actually increases our critical hit damage as well. And then the thing is, we want to have as much ammo as possible in the gun so that we can shoot for as long as possible. Albion Cavalry gun reloads fairly snappy, which is pretty cool. So we don't want to fuck with the reloading too much, that it takes too long to reload. But these two ammo mods are pretty good for us here, because both of them give us more rounds in the magazine, taking us all the way up to 134. But this one also, concentrate support armor, also gives us a small amount of critical hit damage as well, which is pretty good. Now, for our ultimate mod, there's a couple of different ones that I experimented with. If I quickly go over here. Firing Fiesta, I think, is also pretty good, because the thing is, you have this cooldown where you don't consume any rounds, and while you don't consume any rounds, it means that you're pushing out the stun effect more, which is fantastic. I tried that. I tried mental focus. I tried sharp precision shot. In the end, what works really well for me here is sweeping squad. It's the one that I prefer out of all of the ones that I tried, because the point is, you are basically using this as a mob control weapon. Let me be very clear, this weapon can deal okay-ish damage to, let's say, void intercept bosses, but this weapon absolutely shines as a way to suppress a large amount of enemies, keeping them locked down, basically killing them, and just kind of like working your way through it. There's a reason why I call this shit the lawnmower, because that's basically what it does. It cuts the lawn. So sweeping squad fits very well into that, because essentially as you kill enemies, you stack up your firearm attack even more, and this can stack up, and then you keep this buff for a little while as you essentially, and the buff is up the entire time as you push your way through the enemies. Now, this works really well in 400% interceptions, or infiltrations rather is the right word to use, because as you are working your way through the enemies, you are picking up more ammo and everything like that, so you kind of like stay topped up all the time. So I don't necessarily have ammo problems with this per se. However, it is important that we also think about what the possible best application for this weapon is, and which descendant it fits the best, because what we are looking for is a maximum crit rate, so that we can get maximum efficiency with regards to locking down the battlefield and the enemies. That means Haley is your gal, because she has an ability, this one over here called Fury, which basically increases your critical hit rate per stack, and it can stack 16 times as long as you have this on you. Now, I experimented with this, and I was super happy with the results. First of all, you can hit your max crit rate of 100%, which means you're critting all the time. And then the added benefit that you get from Horseshoe on the gun is it negates the slow that you get from her third ability, as you essentially just walk and fucking murder everything. So this works really well. I really enjoyed this, just seeing how efficient this was at essentially lockdown. Of course, I'm playing this solo just to show the effect. If you are running this in groups, then what will be the case is that you will most likely have a situation that you won't have such a massive group of enemies to contain. But what this does do is it locks down the enemies in such a way that the other characters aren't under any pressure. The other descendants aren't being shot at, hit, run at, anything like that. What I love about this is how it just shuts down these enemies that try to like bum rush you and jump on you and shit like that. So just really awesome. But wait, there's more. I thought to myself, wait a minute, we just recently got a new mod, which also is really good at mobbing on Haley. That's cryogenic cluster shot. So what happens when we combine that with the Albion Cavalry? Well, I think the right word is clusterfuck. Like, this is insane. This is I think this slows down my PC for the first time since Freyna, basically. But this hits insane. It hits all over. It blows everything up. So it's massive, like ice AoEs, and it pretty much just basically does AoEs and lockdown and stun and everything to the enemy. So super satisfying to use and just great. Now, I promised I was going to come back and mention why I use chill enhancement. I think by now, maybe from watching the footage, you can see why. The reason being that the original target that you hit has a chance to then be slowed and stunned or basically frozen by chill, because that's what your weapon applies. So it's just a great way to make sure that your shots hit the same enemy the whole time and produce that stun effect, because remember, you have to be hitting the enemy that has the mark on it for the stuns to essentially go out. So this is the reason why I use chill on it, and then that means that for the substats I geared my gun in the same direction. So I wouldn't say that this is obviously has a blue roll on it, but I wanted some additional rounds in the magazine, so that's why we have that there. I also have chill attack on here, so technically speaking I could get rid of that mod and put something else in there to add even more damage onto the gun, which maybe might be even more sexy, which I'm definitely going to do. But firearm critical hit rate on here is also good, as well as firearm attack. Of course, if you don't want to run chill attack on here and you want to run it off the mod, then that of course frees up a slot here for you to put in critical hit rate damage, for example, or critical damage basically. So that's the gun. Having a ton of fun with it. I'm gonna be doing builds for the other two as well, which were changed. I am definitely staring intently at my perforator, because that's definitely also something super exciting. But that's it for the video. Thank you so much for watching, especially if you made it this far. Let me know if you've tried out any of the guns. I think the hot business right now is the perforator. A lot of people are jumping on that shit like hotcakes. But I was already busy with the Albion Cavalry gun, so I figured, you know, here comes the cavalry. Let's get it done. So let me know if you are planning on building something like this as well, if you think it looks dope or not, or any other weapons that you'd like me to try out as well. Other than that, it's just super important to me that you have a fantastic morning, afternoon, evening, wherever you are in the world. Till next video, fucking cheers.